People get used to anything. The less you think about your oppression, the more your tolerance for it grows. After a while, people just think oppression is the normal state of things. But to become free, you have to be acutely aware of being a slave. Assata Shakur. What's up, y'all? It's Mr. Ernest Crim III, your favorite Black history teacher. Welcome to the first episode of Crim's class. Y'all, look, I finally got a podcast. I know folks have been saying this to me for years, but here's the thing. I actually did have a podcast some years ago when I first released my book, How Black History Can Save Your Life. When I put it out, when I self-published it, I should say, I put out a podcast when the world was shut down. And I was interviewing people and I had a few episodes out. And then, as you know, the world stopped again, not only with what happened with COVID, but the murder of George Floyd. So I took to the streets like everybody else during that summer, and the podcast never came back. And for those of you who have been listening to me for some years, you understand how this has happened, right? I started making short form social media content on TikTok and Instagram around 2021. My page started to blow up, and I became someone who was teaching in the classroom, public speaking, making long form content, but I was blowing up because I was making short form content. So from 2021 up until this point, I got used to making 1 minute, 2 minute, maybe 3 minute videos and simply just acquiescing to how people gravitate and digest media in this day and age. But look, y'all, if you know me, you know I love to talk. I made a living doing it as a teacher. Anybody that had my class knew. We had class for 55 minutes, yeah, but I was going to talk at least the first 10. I was going to talk to you too, but at least the first 10, 15, I would have to get some stuff off my chest, talk about what's going on in the world, converse with you and see what's going on. See, the thing now is I felt compelled to do this honestly because there's just so much going on in the world. And yeah, I actually do miss the class too. I miss my students. Yeah. So for every former student that's watching this or listening to this right now, I miss you. The system is the reason why I'm not in the class on a daily basis, but I have so much to say like I did then. And when I left that class in 2022, there was a void. And I think this is going to have to fill that void for right now, along with my public speaking ventures and my other short form content. But y'all know the state of the world right now, politically, socially, economically, it's chaotic. So welcome to the first episode of the Crim's Class podcast, y'all. But check this out. This is going to be formatted like an actual class, okay? Because I'm a teacher by trade. I'm still certified. At any given moment, I'll jump right back in that class, y'all. I promise you. It's like when Jordan came back, I'm trying to tell you, but not the Wizards, though. Not the Wizards version, y'all. Don't compare me to that. I'm talking about when he came back. Not even in 95 when they played the Magic. Nah, we talking about 96, 72, and 10 Jordan, y'all, okay? So with that said, I'm not just going to talk. We're going to interact. And even though I can't, hear or see your response in real time, I know you are interacting with me, right? So before we move forward, I got to check in with you, fam. How are y'all feeling today? On a scale from 1 to 10, stop what you're doing right now and fill in the comment section, the chat, wherever you're watching this at, and let me know how you're feeling on a scale from 1 to 10. I need to know this, but more importantly, you need to know this because you have to be able to check in with yourself every day and throughout the day. Now, I'm going to say this right now. I really want you to listen, but if you are less than a 7, I'm going to need you to pause and do something to help get that number up. All right. So whether that's reading a book, taking a walk, going outside and touching grass, hitting up a friend, it might be putting the phone down. I'm a staunch advocate of that. Even though I make a living in part online, I'm going to tell you, put that thing down. For real, y'all. Put the phone down. How I am today, look, I'm recording this on a Friday. It's been a beautiful week. The state of the world often has me upset, but I wrestle with my internal peace a lot, and I focus on that a lot. So I would say at this point, I'm a 9. And I had a good workout this morning too. So that always makes the flow of things a lot better. Have some good coffee. You know what I'm saying? It's beautiful outside. Okay. Now, with that said, the next thing we're going to do in my class, because we did this in my class, I actually started doing this during the pandemic. Well, you know what? Backtrack. I tried it out before the pandemic. We would meditate and do deep breathing. Shout out to my former colleague and friend, Miss Ashley Samsa, because she's the one that gave me the courage to do it more. I wanted to do it, but it wasn't until I saw that she did it too that I felt the courage to do it. So I said, let me give it a shot. Let me give it a shot. So I would meditate with my class. I would put it on for 5 or 10 minutes. We would listen to something on YouTube. And then when the pandemic happened and I saw the state of our mental health around the country, around the world, our kids, our students, they were suffering. If you were of age during that time, actively in school or work, you know what I mean. It's hard to believe that it's like we're half a decade and counting past that time. But that was a tumultuous time, very tumultuous. So what I did was every Monday, in my class, we meditated. Even if they weren't actually meditating, because it was over Zoom, we had quiet time. And I don't know what they were doing behind the camera. I saw some kids actively doing it because most of the kids did not have their camera on. I still held that space, at least 10 minutes. And then we did some journaling too. When we went back into the classroom, 2021, 2022, going into my last full school year, I kept that same practice. I didn't care what I had to do with my content. I at least set aside that day. And even if it didn't take the whole class, I would set aside time. We're going to meditate, we're going to journal, and then we'll get to everything else because how we feel is the most important thing. We have to be well. Our state of mind has to be well for us to be of service to anybody else. And we have to make sure our kids know that. That's a revolutionary concept, in fact. And that's something that we're going to be talking about today. So with that said, I want you to deep breathe with me, y'all. On the count of 3, we're going to breathe in together. We're going to breathe out. All right. 1, 2, and 3. Let's do it again, y'all. 1, 2, and 3. One more time, y'all. 1, 2, and 3. All right. We should be centered. We should feel a little better. That is actually scientifically proven to help lower cortisol levels and stress levels, y'all. So I highly, highly recommend that you do that on a daily basis. And even though I'm not in the class physically anymore, I do have an online class. It's called the Black History Book Club for Kids. And we do that every time we meet. We meet once a month now, every third Monday. And we also share resources. I'm sharing private videos with the kids and the families and projects throughout the month. And every time we have a class, y'all, yeah, we're deep breathing. So imagine a kid at 5 or 6 years old learning the importance of deep breathing and meditating at that age. I didn't start doing that till I was a grown man. I didn't start till I was a grown man. And it's helped me out immensely. So what happens if we begin to do that? Imagine if the world did that together, right? Things would change. Now, let's get to the content. See, I planned to have my first podcast episode on this day, and I had some stuff written up. I had a script. It was going to talk about some of the things going on in the world, but there's always something happening each and every day. There's something breaking, right? And I was scrolling on Threads, and I saw somebody mention Assata Shakur, and they said, "Rest in peace, Assata Shakur." I couldn't believe that. I hadn't seen any reports. So I thought maybe that was just a rumor. I went over to my Instagram feed and I follow a lot of people in the political realm. So I figured somebody would have been posting about it. I didn't see a thing. I went back to Threads and I looked under that lady's post and a lot of people were mad at her. They were calling her out. They said she's lying. And he said, stop posting stuff like this without proof, right? Because we didn't want it to be true. But as the day went on, as I was finishing my workout, I saw that, in fact, Assata Shakur had passed away. Assata Shakur passed away at the age of 78. I was shocked. My hope was for her to live, to continue to live. To me, even now, like 78, I would still say it's young. I would still say it's young. The older I get, the more I realize these arbitrary labels we put on age, it's all false. That's a young life to me. 10 years older than my parents. My grandmother, still alive, 90 years old. But I'm comforted in the fact that Assata Shakur passed away on her own terms in a country, in a place where she was accepted. In fact, a few months ago, I would say, because I reposted this on my thread, so this was about April. I was just thinking about it one day because we're dealing with so much here politically, the constant attacks on our livelihood, the legislation, the rollbacks we see, the violence we see. And I was just really thinking about Assata on that day. And I was like, yo, Assata Shakur made it. She did that. She did that. To me, that's success, right? And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Assata Shakur was a member of the Black Panther Party and later the Black Liberation Army. She was convicted of killing an officer without any proof. Without any proof. In fact, she had got shot herself. There was no proof at all that she did anything in return or even initiated violence. But regardless of that, a jury that was not of her peers convicted her. And she was locked up. She was locked up in 1973. Assata Shakur had really come to expect that type of treatment, but the fact that it still happened to her was troublesome. She knew she was innocent. So over the course of the next 6 years, she resolved to do something about it. And somehow, some way, with the help of her comrades, in 1979, she escaped. And she was in New Jersey. So I want to draw this connection. When I would teach my students about this, I would have them think about this. It wasn't like she was arrested in Miami, okay? Like you right next to, you know what I'm saying? She eventually went to Cuba, okay? She was in New Jersey, Northeast Coast, and escaped wrongful conviction to Cuba. Not from Miami to Cuba, New Jersey to Cuba. And she was able to live the rest of her life there. Now, of course, it wasn't like she just lived there and there were no other attacks on her. And what I mean by attacks, I'm talking about through the media and I'm talking through politicians. Because not only was she wrongfully convicted, she escaped. They wanted someone to take the fall for what happened to that officer on that day in 1973. Those officers were firing shots at them. Who knows? Was it another officer who did it? They wanted to get somebody for it, as they have often done throughout our history, and they pinned it on her. So to resolve this case, she's locked up. The family's fine with it, I'm sure. But she got away. She got away. So in a sense, she beat the system. She beat the system and the attacks that we are constantly faced with. And when I think about what it means to be successful, that is somebody to me that embodies that. Oftentimes in America, we'll embody success by the so-called American dream, having a lot of wealth, having a huge yard, the family, the kids, the dogs, the wife, or the husband, whatever, like, and just able to go to work, 9 to 5 every day for 30, 40 years, working for somebody else, doing God knows what, being able to retire. Then you go on a vacation, the so-called American dream. It's never been that way in the Black community. Although there are some who are fully immersed in capitalism, who do reap the benefits of that. To her, success was standing up for her people. To her, success was being a part of a movement to help us persevere as people, to be revolutionary. And that is the antithesis to what this society wants for anybody, especially in the Black community. So during the time that she was there in Cuba with political asylum, the U.S. politicians and law enforcement elevated her case into a symbol, raising the bounty on her capture from $150,000 to $2 million. Like if somebody could go to Cuba, grab her, bring her back, that's how much money they would get. Can you imagine that? Think of like this is somebody who did not do what they said she did. And I want you to think about all the politicians and how they are complicit with death, genocide around the world, around the country. But this person, you are placing a $2 million bounty on her head. And in fact, in 2013, she became the first woman to be placed on the FBI's most wanted terrorist list. This was a bipartisan affair. They kept trying to get her, both parties, and they never were successful. They just couldn't do it. So even though I feel like, and I wish and hope that she could have lived longer, I know that she was able to live the rest of her life on her own terms. And I think that is what makes this story so powerful, because we don't often see that. Think about the era that she was living through, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. Just name the people, the leaders that were killed and assassinated during that time. Of course, we know Dr. King, we know Malcolm X, right? Fred Hampton, for standing up for people and saying that we should be treated as human beings. Common sense. According to them, based on what they wanted for her, she should still be locked up. And with that said, free Mumia as well. So I figured instead of doing what I originally planned, I want to go through some quotes that truly reflect the person that she was. And I want us to really reflect on what she said, because what she talked about through her writings, through her commentary, is still relevant today. And if you remove yourself from understanding who wrote it or said it, and remove yourself from the time period it was said in, you would think that somebody wrote it today. So these are my 10 favorite Assata Shakur quotes at this moment, because these could be interchangeable with 10 others, right? But as we go through this, y'all, I want you to reflect. So now the teacher mode is coming back out. This ain't just a podcast. This ain't just a video series. This is a classroom. So we have to read and reflect and think about, how do we apply these quotes in this moment in time? How do we apply? So the very first quote is the quote I started this show with. She said, "People get used to anything. The less you think about your oppression, the more your tolerance for it grows. After a while, people just think oppression is the normal state of things. But to become free, you have to be acutely aware of being a slave." Pause and reflect. Pause and reflect. Are we used to our oppression at this point in time in this country? And when I talk about that, that's a universal question. Because, yeah, it applies to the Black community. Yeah, it applies to the Latino community, but it applies to everybody else too. Because the policies that we have seen enacted during this term so far, and the way that people have suffered in this country, as long as it's been around, although they have targeted the indigenous people of this land, my community, hey, Anybody can get it. Anybody can get this poverty. Anybody can get their health care stripped away. Anybody can get their SNAP food benefits stripped away. So when she talks about being a slave, what she means is a slave to this system. We're not just talking about whips and chains on a plantation. Are you used to it? Are you comforted in your oppression? Is it normal to you? Have you turned the other cheek so much, and not turned the other cheek the way it was talked about in Bible, or talked about in the way that Dr. King enacted it, but turning the other cheek in the sense that you just look away. You see the struggle. You see the suffering. But we've grown accustomed to it. Do you know that, like, from what I'm hearing in the media, there has, in a sense, been a war waged against homeless people, houseless folks. The violent rhetoric that I have heard from political commentators saying that they should be put to death for existing. The fact that people want to arrest them for existing. And this is not just something that you hear in television. These words are powerful. Words can form they plant seeds in our mind. They grow and blossom into something else if we don't intercede. I saw a story of an encampment of houseless folks being shot at in Minneapolis not too long ago. There was a white man in Mississippi, houseless. He was discovered hanging from a tree in the middle of the woods. We don't know how that happened, but the disregard for that life, even if it was him, let's say he did it and committed suicide, it could possibly be because of how he did not feel valued in this society. And that goes without saying. We must also say rest in peace, Trey Reed, who was also found hanging from a tree in Mississippi that same day, same week, on a college campus. Have we grown accustomed to hearing stories like that? Do we think that it's okay? When do we say something different? When do we do something different? The way that we view houseless people is not just rhetoric that we hear from politicians and commentators. When I scroll through Facebook, and I swear it's like Facebook is trying their best to make me conservative. They keep feeding me pages I don't follow. But I'm seeing a lot of local pages do something that is really disgusting and disrespectful. Taking pictures of houseless folks, posting them online, and making fun of them. And what's even more disgusting about this is when you look in the comments, most people who are commenting are not defending the person who's begging. Now, of course, maybe it could be because of the folks who are following the page, but it's still disturbing to me. Where is our humanity? Many of us don't realize that we are one step away from being in that same condition. We are seeing social services stripped away left and right. We have to really humble ourselves. None of us want to be in that position. Of course, that's not to say that every single time you see somebody, but we have to really reflect on how that person got to that position. Humble ourselves and think about what we can do to prevent our community, and think about what we can do long term to help folks in that condition. The next quote. Oh, now she's spitting on this one because you know I'm a former classroom teacher turned public teacher, so I feel this. She said, "The schools we go to are reflections of the society that created them. No one is going to give you the education you need to overthrow them. Nobody is going to teach you your true history, teach you your true heroes, if they know that knowledge will help set you free." Assata Shakur was spitting on it. I got a couple about education on this, y'all. And I want to really take some time to take that all in. I'm going to read it one more time for you. The schools we go to are reflections of the society that created them. No one is going to give you the education you need to overthrow them. Nobody is going to teach you your true history, teach you your true heroes if they know that that knowledge will help set you free. One of the biggest issues I had about teaching in a public school system, y'all, was the fact that I was essentially mandated to teach my students things that had nothing to do with solving the problems in their community. See, I got into teaching because I looked at it as a liberatory force. When I learned about myself for the first time in a classroom setting, when I was in college on the verge of flunking out, my mind was set free the moment I took that first Black History course. I was able to put all the dots together and connect them and think about my condition critically and understand the way the system operates in a way that would land me in this position where I was a minority of a minority of a minority at that PWI I went to. I got in the classroom because I wanted to instill that same passion and understanding in all the children I taught, particularly kids from my background, because I understood that situation and that experience. My idea was like, yo, if I'm able to teach our kids this information that I'm paying $20,000 a year to learn, they would be inspired the same way I was inspired. That leads to us changing our condition. That leads to us participating and voting more. That leads to us building more in our community. That leads to us engaging and creating businesses that serve us. That leads to us building schools that serve us. That leads to us creating a broader system that serves all of humanity, something better than what we've ever seen before. It allows us to see that we aren't the first ones to experience this pain or this progress, and that we are not the source of the issues we face. And the fact, there was an elaborate system and scheme put in place since we were enslaved. Now, but when I'm teaching my students, and I'm teaching at the time at a diverse school, Black, white, Latino, a school that had over 80% poverty, a school that existed in a community where they were suffering from food apartheid. It's a food desert. A community on the side of town where more violence was in that exact location than on the other side of town at their school. A community that was surrounded by vacant lots and buildings, similar to how I grew up on the south side of Chicago. It was perturbing to me that I was then expected to then just start to teach them about George Washington, the so-called founding fathers. It didn't really make sense to me, because education should be something that's transformative, not something that leads to us maintaining the status quo. If the status quo is leading or has led to the problems we have now and is making things worse for the majority of people, then we must change course. And when I say that, it's really true. A majority of the people in this country are suffering. And a majority of the people in this country will, unless something changes. But nothing can change unless you are aware of your condition. Going back to that first quote, you have to be aware of the condition we are in that is harming us all. So, as Assata Shakur said in his quote, schools are a reflection of the society that created them, though. The same thought process that has led to this moment, that is able and willing to ignore all of the atrocities that have happened in the past and continue to happen today, is creating the curriculums mostly, and it's creating the school systems that would lead to that happening again and again and again in a cycle. And even if your children do not become active participants, they'll become passive participants, okay? Meaning, every school should be starting with the genocide of the indigenous people in this country if we're talking about U.S. history. And in fact, let's go back further. We should be starting with a variety of civilizations that they had here before they came in contact with Europeans or came in contact with Columbus. They should be learning that this land looked completely different. There were millions of people who lived here, an entirely different group of people. Imagine that. We can't hardly quantify it because everything has been paved over. Everything has been destroyed. But our kids need to know that. If they don't know that, then how can they connect it to the current genocides happening across the world right now that our country is participating in and investing in? But if we don't teach our kids about that connection and then help them understand how that led to the issues they face in their immediate communities, then they continue to get used to their oppression. And in fact, they don't think there is any oppression. They think it's just normal to suffer. They think it's normal to be in an ocean, struggling for their lives, struggling, paddling, trying to finding a way to get above water so they don't drown while they're right next to a group of people on a cruise ship. They think that's normal, unless you show them how they got in that position. With that, we have to also understand, though, most, not all, but most of the school systems we have in place won't give you that proper education. You will have some teachers who will. They will be in the minority unless your child is in a private school that focuses on that. And those exist, but they are in the minority. So that means that for everybody that's listening, that is aware that there's something wrong in society, we have to understand that it is up to us to educate our kids. Firstly, right? Before your child goes to public school at 5 years old, they should already have learned something from you, something of value and merit, according to their condition and who they are and who you want them to be. And even when they are in a public school setting, they should still be learning from you. We should be critical of the things they are learning, particularly in a social studies class, which is what I taught, in an English class, right? We want to make sure that they are exposed to people who look like them. We want to make sure they are exposed to people who criticize and analyze the society they were existing in. Because if you're reading about people in the 1800s, we got to understand what was happening then. It's slavery. It's the genocide of indigenous people. It's rampant poverty, right? Let's not forget that when this country was first founded, it wasn't just white folks that could vote. It was white men, but not even just white men. You had to own land, so you had to be wealthy, a very small percentage. If we understand that, then we can connect the dots and understand and see why people are still trying to roll back that type of privilege, that type of right. Because if you start with that foundation and you understand that not everybody could vote, then you can get a better understanding of why the government is operating the way it is operating right now and attempting to take back that privilege from people or to give that right to more folks of a certain ideology than others. Our kids understand and see that something ain't right. And as educators, teachers, parents, community leaders, it's up to us to connect those dots. We don't give them everything, but we want to teach them how to think. You don't have to, give your kids your perspective. You just have to show them the truth. Because if they can go outside on their side of town and identify things that aren't there that they need, and then go to the western side of a town or the northern side of a town, or in some cases, maybe it's the western side of a town, and they can see, I think I said west 2 times. That's all good. But if they can see those differences, then they begin to ask questions. It's like, wait, why do they have more things? Now, we know having more is not a hallmark of success, but we know in a capitalist society where we say that education is the way, the path, right? And we know that there are people throughout history who have worked very, very hard and have nothing to show for it, right? My ancestors were enslaved. You know what I'm saying? Working very hard by force, no reparations, nothing from that. You can draw a straight line between that inequity and the inequity we see in Black communities, Latino communities, the inequity that we can see in rural communities, rural white communities, in fact. Teaching our kids to think. So if we need something better and want something better, yeah, it would be nice if our teachers taught them, and some will. Some will give them nuggets. I'm not discounting all educators in all schools. Some places will give kids the proper nuggets they need, the proper structure. They will expose them to different things. But it's up to us to then say, how can we use this to our advantage to improve our condition and improve the conditions for people? My children will learn more Black history from me than they will from any teacher, unless they go to a school or college, a HBCU or college where they take a Black history course. And that is my hope, that they go somewhere where they can take a course, right, and be able to learn these things. But up until this point, my oldest daughter is 12 at the time of this recording. They have been learning about themselves since they came out the womb. Even though they didn't understand it, the children's books I was reading to them before they could even form a word. That's important. That's a part of the real work. And if you are doing that too, the next thing is, how do you do it for those around you? How can you do it for your community? Let's get out of the mindset of thinking that kids can only learn in school, because that's not true. By the time your kid goes to a public school for kindergarten at 5, they've already learned a lot that's going to shape who they are as a person. Those first 5 years are very important. The brain is very malleable during that time. They're picking up everything from everybody they are around constantly. The images, who you are, how you interact with people, all of that. So you are already teaching them. My brother, Mr. Cage, had this quote that he shared with me when he said, some folk, and I'm about to mess it up, so forgive me, bro. But he said some folks shy away from education in preference of entertainment, not realizing that their entertainment is actually educating them. So whether we are active or passive, we're teaching our kids something. We're learning something through social interaction all times of the day. We're learning how to treat people, how to treat ourselves. I have to always correct my kids when, if I ask them a question about how their school day went, and if they had like a real low-key day, they'll say, oh, it was cool because we didn't do any learning today. We maybe just watched a movie. I say, oh, hold up. If I ask you what you learned today, I'm not talking about times tables. I'm not talking about math formulas. I'm not talking about a date in history. I'm talking about, what did you extract from it? Because out of all the people that are listening to this right now, all of you all will extract something different. Some will explicitly extract what I am intending to teach, whereas some of you all will extract something different, because we're in different places mentally. We perceive things differently. Knowledge is power. The right knowledge is power, right? Frederick Douglass said, knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. Assata Shakur said, they ain't going to give you that information if they know that knowledge will help set you free. Freedom first starts here. I was speaking to a group of young teens in a juvenile detention center in Ohio not too long ago, and that was the topic of conversation. What does it mean to be free? I only had 10 minutes with these 3 different groups, but I wanted them to understand that true freedom does not begin on the day they are released from that condition. True freedom begins at any point of your life where you are exposed to something that has you be critical of society and question things and think for yourself and advocate for yourself and have empathy towards all human beings. Freedom could be where they are. They could learn to be free, but it does not have to be that way. They can come across the right knowledge that will free their mind. And for anybody that's listening that has ever had their mind freed from the shackles of what society tries to imprison them with, you understand what I mean. Because once you are able to get out of that mental prison, you never look back. I'm still going myself. I'm still exploring. Because once you are able to get out of that prison metaphorically, and in Assata Shakur's case, literally, right? Literally, you understand that that prison is very small in comparison to the entire world. And there's so much to see. Man, I'm only on quote 2. Can y'all believe this? I'm only on quote 2. All my former students listening ain't surprised, though. I'm only on quote 2. I said 10. What? All right. Next quote. Schools in America are interested in brainwashing people with Americanism, giving them a little bit of education and training them in skills needed to fill the positions the capitalist system requires. As long as we expect America's schools to educate us, we will remain ignorant. That's directly connected to what I just said. I could really say less on that one. There's a little bit to break down, but I'm going to say it again so you can really feel what I'm talking about. Schools in America are interested in brainwashing people with Americanism, giving them a little bit of education and training them in skills required to fill the positions that capitalist system requires. As long as we expect America's schools to educate us, we will remain ignorant. That's what Assata said. What that means, I'm giving you information from the inside, all right? I taught for 12 years. I taught at an alternative school. I taught at a larger public school. Now I got my own private online class that I teach. I'm showing you all of this. I taught high school. Elementary will show you something different. This is what it is, though. Our school systems are set up, and this is true, right? We're brainwashing children. And when we say Americanism, again, just like I said before, it's continuing the traditions, harmful or otherwise, that have led us to this point. Truthfully, it is to turn a blind eye to any of the corruption we could see in this country in preference of saying things like, we're better than this, right? So you get a little education. There is education that takes place in school because the things I talk about, y'all, like these are not absolutes, right? You can extract a lot. I've extracted a lot from the education I got. And education is something I'm not saying don't go to school, but I'm saying we have to be aware of the fact that we can't just give our kids to the school without forming this partnership and wrestling with these things with them on a daily basis. Not everybody's going to homeschool or pod school. Not everybody can do that in this society. So they get a little education, but then they're really trained to be a part of this capitalist system. What does that mean? That means that they are trained to, of course, be punctual. And that's a good thing, right? Be punctual. Be punctual. They are trained to have, to be celebrated for having perfect attendance, which that's a big con right there. It took me a while to understand that, but that's a huge con. I didn't realize that till I was probably halfway through my teaching career, y'all. Let me tell you why it's a con. Because we celebrate kids, right, who are going to school every day. I grew up baseball fan. Cal Ripken was the Iron Man because he played all these thousands of games in a row. But human beings need a break, bruh. We need time off. There is no shame in taking a day off. My first couple years teaching before I got tenure, I was of that mindset too. I ain't missing a day unless I absolutely have to. That's going to look bad. I ain't missing no day, especially my first year. We are taught to grind until we fall apart. Grind until we collapse, all for the sake of this institution so that they can extract labor from us. And then when we're gone, they bring in the next person. We have to prioritize ourselves first. And when I say that, I mean us as humans. That's why I checked in when we first started. That's why I did deep breathing. Take that time if you need to. For all my teachers out there, shoot, look, I'm going to tell you, you get those days for a reason. I can't remember the exact amount, but we got it was about 15 a year. That's how many days they gave us. And when you didn't take them, they rolled over. You got folks who by the end of their teaching career got so many days they didn't take, they can take the whole next school year off. It's wild, right? They give you them days for a reason. And even if they didn't, I'm going to say take it. Take it at least once a month. Whatever you need. Take that time off. The way we have this system set up right now is incomprehensible. It doesn't make any sense. 5 straight days, 8 hours a day. That's not including commute. Then you get 2 days. As an educator, that's really 1 day because Sunday you're preparing for the next day, right? So we're preparing our kids to grind and hustle and bustle. But is it tied to a broader purpose, though? There is a season in your life, I believe, that could be necessary. Yes, definitely. But are we going to do that our entire lives? Black men have the lowest life expectancy in this country. All other men, on average, live longer lives than us. Now, there's a combination of factors that contribute to that. Health, of course. Historical trauma, of course. But then also we have to incorporate the fact that we are taught that the way out of our condition, which impacts all of us as a group, is to grind, 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 hustle, hustle, hustle until the wheels fall off. You're just being filled in on that conveyor belt, that assembly line. Everybody on the assembly line at the factory has one thing to do, and it gets passed along. If you fall out on that assembly line, they remove you, put the next person in. So we have to find something deeper. Education should be revolutionary to the mind. Assata said, as long as we expect America's school to educate us, then we will remain ignorant. Reflect. Ignorant is not knowing. So your kids can go to school for 12 years and not know what? How to liberate themselves, how to be an advocate for their communities, how to critically analyze what's happening to them, the oppression they could be under, the inequity that exists, how to defend themselves in various ways and methods. You can graduate from school with a 4.0 and be absolutely foolish and ignorant. That's what this is saying because it's true. We've seen it time and time again. You can go to I don't care what type of school you go to. These are all social constructs anyway. Ivy League school, you might go overseas and you might become this type of scholar, might get a PhD, and you could be absolutely foolish and ignorant. All that theory, no praxis. What are we doing for the least of us? What are we doing for our people, for the community? What are we doing for humanity? In education, we read about the people who did, who were active, right? Read, then apply. Read, then apply. That's the social science. That's the science of it. We're going to see what works and what sticks. Oh, man, I'm taking so long on these quotes, y'all. Can you believe it? I ain't going to get nowhere near 10 of these. Okay. Man. All right. Next one. This might be one y'all are familiar with. Nobody in the world, nobody in history has ever gotten their freedom by appealing to the moral sense of the people who were oppressing them. That was said by Assata Shakur. One of the things I really pull from Assata Shakur's life, and this is related to this quote, is the fact that our country, if you're listening to this in America or abroad, right? Because I don't think, a lot of these places don't got it right. So, hey, this is universal. Our countries are not the standard for humanity, for civilization. We are prisoners of this time. This is all we know. This is all we've experienced. Regardless of all the books we can read or the documentaries or shows, or even traveling for a little bit, this is all we know. So we cannot be set on getting something better, something that we have not experienced, by appealing to the very thing that has led to us being in this condition. Let that breathe for a second. Nobody in the world, nobody in history has ever gotten their freedom by appealing to the moral sense of the people who were oppressing them. You have to do something different. You have to do something different. Assata Shakur is in that legacy. She did not passively accept the oppression she was under, the wrongful conviction. She didn't wait for them to get it right, to go through the court. And maybe one day they would have. Maybe after she died in prison, they would have said, you know what? There was no proof. And in fact, she was shot a couple times. So do we wait for that? Or are we like Rosa Parks? Something happens, Or we like Dr. King. We're going to make something happen. Or we like Malcolm X. Going to make something happen. Fred Hampton. Ida B. Wells. You know what I'm saying? Frederick Douglass. Fannie Lou Hamer. We're going to make something happen. Oh, yeah. I ain't going to have no time for the rest of this. But look, y'all, look. This is why I got a podcast. So that I can continue having these conversations, these very, very important conversations. And in fact, really, what better way to start this Crim's Class podcast than with a dedication to the great Assata Shakur? So because of that, I'm going to have to continue this on the next one. So you're going to have to make sure that you are subscribed. You're going to have to make sure you are sharing this. You're going to have to make sure that you are in tune with what I'm doing. Because Assata Shakur lived a life that is worthy of more than the time that I have allotted for her. She's one of my heroes. And I can't even I'm trying to really reflect on when I first came across Assata Shakur. I didn't learn about her in school. Okay. Understand that. A lot of our heroes are not taught about in the curriculums. And if they are, reflect on how they would be taught about. You know what I'm saying? They ain't going to show her like a hero. If they do talk about it, I made sure my kids understood. And how did I draw that line though? Her last name. The name she changed to, right? Assata Shakur. Who else do we know with that name? Oh, Tupac Shakur. So my kids coming in class, I'm playing some Tupac. No matter what generation, these kids weren't even alive when he was around. But Tupac, only 25 years. That impact, immeasurable. And I say, look at these two people. They name, right? Assata Shakur was Tupac's godmother. In my mind, I'm sure I became aware of her through Tupac, who was also a revolutionary artist, not just a hip hop artist or a rapper. He was a revolutionary artist. And then we talk about Common had a song, Thinking of Assata. I want to close on that, y'all, because this is the power of hip hop, the power of our music to transmit a message to us in our infancy that can have a lasting impact. You got to think about that in comparison to what you can hear on the radio right now, because I promise you, I'm just bewildered at the fact that our community as Black folks, the issues we're dealing with now, the daily attacks on our history, our people, the HBCU bomb threats, and so on and so forth. People Trey Reed found hanging from a tree. And when you turn on our so-called Black stations or hip-hop stations, they acting like it's a party every day. That's how they keep us uninformed. That's how they keep us miseducated, because the school I'm talking about, that Assata was talking about, is not just in the building. It's that type of mainstream commercialization of our culture. Tupac was able to work around that in a way that we have never seen before. And he was only 25, right? So you got Tupac's introducing me to Assata. You got Common Sense, Chicago's very own, the legendary Common Sense, had a song with CeeLo about her. And then you got Dead Prez, who I'm mentioning solely for the fact that they introduced me to so many revolutionary people with their album, Let's Get Free. Album changed my life when my sister gave me that. Talking about Fred Hampton and so on and so forth. This is the power of our culture. And if we're really serious about this right here, liberation and freedom for all people, then we have to make sure that even the music we listen to, there's a time to have fun and party. I ain't discounting that. But we are getting this brainwashing conditioning music that's sedating us. It's happening and putting us in a trance perpetually. If I can learn about her as a child from hip hop artists, and she can have this lasting impact on who I am and how I think, and think about the impact that can have on our kids today. And here's the beauty of society now. All you got to do is sit up your favorite DSP and put on a song from an artist that's speaking about truthful things like this, and watch the magic unfold, y'all. So it's almost time for us to wind down, y'all. The bell is about to ring. But you ain't about to leave without getting this homework. Now, I don't call it homework, but I'm just saying that because I know that's what y'all used to. I call it life work. All right, all my kids in my Black History Book Club course, they know I call it life work, because this is something you should be doing every day. I ain't going to grade it, but you need to be doing it because life is going to test you. I ain't going to test you. Life going to test you. So I need you to read. You already know I brought the book out for today. Assata Shakur's autobiography. Make sure you're reading that. All right? Now, of course, I got my book in here too. You know what I'm saying? Because truthfully, how Black history can save your life, like there is no this without this. Read this book and reflect. How do we apply that knowledge and that information in this moment? And I'm going to close the class how I started the class, right before the bell ring. Assata Shakur once said, people get used to anything. The less you think about your oppression, the more your tolerance for it grows. After a while, people just think oppression is the normal state of things. But to become free, you have to be acutely aware of being a slave. Have a good day, y'all. Class is dismissed.